One of the fundamental building blocks of any program is the variable. Variables allow us to store data in our programs, but they're much more than just storage containers. They enable us to perform calculations, manipulate data, and control program. For instance, let's create a variable to store an integer value. In Java, we create a variable using a specific format. To create an integer-type variable, we use the int keyword, and to give it a name, we choose a variable name such as coin. We can also assign an initial value to the variable, such as 0. Now that we've created the coin variable, we can change its value by simply assigning a new value to it. For example, if we do coin equals 10, the coin variable will now store the number 10. Just like boxes can store items, bottles can store water, and bags can store books, variables in a computer program can store different types of data. There are different types of variables that can store different types of data, such as integers to store whole numbers, booleans to store true or false values, strings to store text, and objects to store complex data. Let's first understand the integer data type. It can store numbers, but not all numbers. It cannot store decimal numbers or numbers that exceed its size range. Other variables such as byte, short and long can also store numbers, but the difference lies in their size. For example, the byte variable can only store numbers ranging from minus to plus 127, while the int variable can store numbers ranging from minus to plus 2,147,483,647. There's no need to remember all of the specific details, but it's important to understand the general concept of how variables work in programming. Additionally, there are float and double data types which can store numbers with decimal points. These data types are useful when dealing with calculations that involve decimal numbers. Now that we have understood the variables that store numbers, let's move on to the variables that store text, string variables. They can hold any combination of letters, numbers, and symbols, and are enclosed in quotation marks. For example, if we wanted to store the name John in a string, we would write string name equals John. Now the variable name stores the text John, and we can manipulate it in various ways within our program. Strings are a data type that can store large amounts of text or sequences of characters. Whereas, characters or char variable can only store a single character. It's important to choose the appropriate data type for the type of data you want to store in your program. For example, you would use a string to store a sentence or a paragraph, while you would use a char to store a single letter or a symbol. And our last variable type is Boolean. This type of variable can only store two values, true or false. Boolean variables are commonly used in programming to represent logical conditions or states, such as whether a condition is true or false. For example, let's create a Boolean variable named isButtonClicked, which can be used to represent whether a button is clicked or not, with true representing that the button is clicked and false representing that it is not clicked. Great! In future videos, we will discuss more about variables and explore various programming concepts.